For the first time ever this year, 2019, digital ad spending will exceed traditional ad spending, $130 billion to $110 billion. As we've seen in our own public relations practice, we're relying more and more on paid advertising and digital marketing and reaching out to digital influencers because the traditional earned media space is changing and we're needing to compensate increasingly for those changes. It helps to have all of us on the same page with a basic understanding of the kinds of ways that we can target our audiences for our clients using various digital platforms and the features that might be available. If you go back to the history of marketing and advertising and public relations, the value in any given medium was that you had a large audience you could reach. It was about reaching the most number of eyeballs. The challenge is, over time, as different platforms have emerged, they've spilled out audience members, and we've seen a fragmentation so that there's not that large concentration of people who watch TV or read a print newspaper or listen to the radio. And so the downside of that is that you have lost some of the value in those large mass media platforms. But the upside is that we now have ever more tools to reach the right eyeballs through the digital platforms that have emerged to replace traditional media. So you're thinking about something like Google and YouTube. That's probably something like Facebook, something like LinkedIn or Twitter, something like Pinterest even. And you can kind of see these are a rough sort of illustration of the size of these platforms and how many people are actively using them, but also the amount of time that those users spend. And so at a basic level, one of the first things to understand is that different platforms offer different amounts of ad inventory. Some, like Facebook and Google, have a lot of ad inventory because they have so many users who spend so much time on the platforms. And there's also the important consideration that they know different things about us. So putting all this aside, if you think about what makes us up as people and what platforms might know about us, you think of these different components of you as a person. So for example, this could be your work life. This could be your personal life. This could be the volunteer work that you do. You can have things like, companies that you subscribe to or movies that you like, all those sorts of various things that make us up as people. Each of these platforms knows different things about us. Some know more, some know less. So if you think of a platform like Pinterest or Twitter, they have very small bios, so 160 characters, so they don't know much in terms of what we disclose about ourselves. What they do know a lot about is perhaps our desires or our interests, because they're platforms where we can follow or share things that we are interested in and participate in discussions and media sharing around those things. So what they know is fairly limited. And that also has an impact on what they can target people with, because they only know these things, so that's what they're able to target ads based on. If you think about a platform like LinkedIn, they may know a bit more. They have much more detailed bios, so they've got all of that. They know some of the things that we do. They have a very deep understanding of, say, our work history or what we're interested in terms of our career. The challenge with a platform like LinkedIn is they're missing a large portion of who we actually are as people, because they're sort of a polished presentation of ourselves on LinkedIn, since it's a professional platform. It's something where we sort of guard and edit ourselves to be a different sort of a person. So in some cases, it's very valuable for targeting if you know that you can target people by their job role, or for example, their work history, or companies that they've worked for. Those kinds of things are valuable for targeting on LinkedIn, but they don't know as much about our desires and what we're interested in. It's much rarer that people will follow companies, and they don't really have a good infrastructure, although they're trying to change that because they've realized it's a shortcoming. They're trying to change their platforms so that they understand better who their users are based on their interests. Now, if you take a platform like Facebook, and think about all of the things that Facebook knows about us. Facebook probably has the closest, they probably know, they're probably the closest part to platform that knows, this whole picture of us. They are integrated in multiple ways. So there are a lot of third-party apps and other tools that tie into Facebook. If you think about my Fitbit account is tied into my Facebook account, my Peloton account is tied into my Facebook account, so they know on a basic level about even down to my level of fitness. They also, for example, own other platforms. So within Facebook, you also have Instagram, and they also own WhatsApp. So they may know other things from those platforms they can gather together. Similarly, Facebook is just a more robust experience than on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Your posts are much longer. There are more options for reactions. Just think about in a given post, you may react one of 6 different ways. And that was actually one of the reasons that Facebook added reactions, was it gives them new streams of data to better understand their users. Somebody that tends to hate things versus using the sad reaction, that says something about them that they can ultimately likely write an algorithm to use for ad targeting. Facebook also has more of a picture of our connections because we have more of our personal network, and it's also much more visible and much more delineated who our personal versus professional networks are. So based on that, Facebook probably has a much bigger picture. A platform like Google probably has also this, but they also have probably even more information about us in the form of search. They know what we're looking for right now. Now, Facebook sort of has a picture into this. They've become a search engine in their own right, and as much as possible, they try to keep you in the Facebook system so that they can be serving ads to you based on what they know. But Google, something on the order of 93% of web experiences begin with a Google search. Google has vastly more market share than any of the other search engines. It's not even close. And so the amount of data that Google has about us is even larger than the amount of data that Facebook has. Because if you think about it, in addition to that, so Facebook also owns the number 2 search engine online, which is YouTube. And they also have the entire suite of other products that they use that they can filter and create algorithms to understand us better from the Google suite. So Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Drive. They also are able to analyze what we write in Gmail and use that to serve ads to us. So they have just probably a much richer picture. And so for digital advertising, Facebook and Google tend to be the best places to start first because they have the largest audiences, they know the most about those audiences and make that actionable for advertisers, but they also offer the most robust platforms and their users spend a whole lot of time on them. So they have a lot of ad inventory, they can do a lot more very interesting things with targeting that we'll talk about in a minute. So if we think about some of the targeting methods that are available to us, probably the first one that comes to mind is demographic targeting, right? The idea that you can target somebody by gender, that you can target somebody by socioeconomic status, whether that's income, education level, features like that, things like race, things like geography, these sort of marketing categories that have been available for a long time, and that they're fairly well understood and are readily available across all the platforms. You can still target using these categories on pretty much any of the social media sites or the digital platforms. The challenge is there's a more limited use set for when those are valuable. And in most cases, there's a better way to build an audience than by these demographic features. Certainly understanding gender is helpful, and it can help you narrow things down, but ultimately there's usually better ways to do things. And especially if you have a product or a service or some message you're trying to communicate that may appeal to both genders, they don't really have much relevance for you at all. They're not really helpful to let you break things down. It might change what message you target that audience with. You may know that your female audience is different from your male audience in terms of what keywords they need to hear, but other than that, it doesn't help you for targeting. Another platform is interest or affinity targeting. And so in the case of interest or affinity targeting, that's where, and this is something that has arisen only because of the level of detail that social media platforms or search platforms know about us. But interest or affinity targeting lets you basically build an audience based on interests. It's something that in the olden days of mass media was the kind of thing that magazines were allowed people to do. You could reliably guarantee that the readers of Food and Wine are going to be interested in food and wine. And so that's one way to segment by interest. Now that option is available in a much more robust form in digital platforms, ranging from search to social media to display ads. And so essentially, that lets you choose from a list of available interests that are out there and serve ads to those people. Now, the challenge with the downside of interest or affinity targeting is that you're limited to what interests or affinities are available. And so on a platform like YouTube, they're fairly limited. And if you don't have a client that, or a product or a message or a goal that fits well within those interests or affinity categories, then you're stuck trying to pick the closest thing, and you invariably end up with some people that are not as relevant, and you end up spending money to reach these people that might not be as relevant. The good thing, though, is that interest and affinity categories are available on virtually all of the platforms. It's another one of those, like demographics, readily available categories to choose from. Advertisers have realized that affinity and interest audiences aren't perfect, and so in some cases, they have created custom affinity audiences, and that lets you build the affinity categories so that rather than targeting people that are sort of like those that you want, you can just target those that you want, so that you just end up reaching those people that you're interested in. The challenge is this is only available on a platform like Google that's very robust. But what you can do if you have a campaign that fits this, you could say take a website address of a competitor, or take a website of an interest group or a hobby group that's very aligned with what your client's goal is, or you could use certain keywords to build your own custom affinity groups. And at that point, you get much more relevant in terms of your targeting. Another form of targeting that's available primarily on Google is in-market targeting. Because Google knows so much about us based on what we're searching for, they know when people are in market being when they are looking to buy something. And this isn't as big of a benefit for, say, consumer packaged goods, small things like Pop-Tarts or ice cream, because people are pretty much always in the market to buy those things. This has a lot more benefit for large purchases, something like cars or homes or large-scale business services. So what Google is able to do is, again, in limited categories where they do have opportunities, they can identify for you, oh, you know what? These people are actually in market for this service. They're looking to buy a car, and in a lot of cases, they are able to tell you with fairly reliable levels what window that's in. Is it near term? Is it 6 to 9 months? Is it a year to 2 years out? And so that's yet another option that is available in the situations where that makes sense. Another form of targeting that is available is keyword targeting, and this is the kind of thing that you see in Google search ads. It's an incredibly popular platform. Search engine marketing has grown into its own right as its own channel, and it's a really great way, if you understand your audience and what their motivations are, to reach them right at the zero moment of truth when they're making a decision about a product or service or action that they're going to take. And as we said earlier, over 90% of web experiences begin with a search. So this is a large segment of the population that you're talking about. And it produces some really interesting results. So, for example, one of our clients was Help Eliminate Auto Thefts. And this is an organization dedicated to reducing auto-related crime. One of the things that they had was a tip line. Now, the challenge with driving calls to a tip line, which was our goal, is that this could be anybody. There isn't a demographic group, there isn't a particular interest necessarily that you could tie to a person that might report an auto crime. It could be somebody that works in an insurance office that notices insurance fraud. It could be somebody downtown in a city that happens to witness something. Could be somebody in a neighborhood. There's not even necessarily a geography that you could tie to this. It's simply people that happen to witness an auto crime. And so what search ads allow us to do is develop a very specific list of words or terms or questions that we might want to place ads for when people might be searching for the kind of things related to reporting auto crimes. So, things like how to reward for auto crime, reward for reporting suspect, how do I contact the auto crime task force, things like that. You can get very, very specific with search, and it's very inexpensive to do ads that way because they only run when someone searches something relevant. And so you can have them running in the background all the time and potentially waiting to leap out when somebody searches for the right set of terms. It's a very powerful way to do ads. Probably the most effective form of ad targeting is when you can actually get your audience involved in the process of the ad targeting. And that's where custom targeting comes in. Probably the most effective form of targeting is when you can get your audience involved and actually make decisions based on the population that you work with. And that's where custom or tailored audiences come in. And in a situation like this, what you can do is say, okay, Facebook, I have this email address. I need you to find this group of users on Facebook and let me target to them. Or you can exclude them. Let's say we already have these people on our email subscriber list. So as we're targeting for a larger population, say people that are interested in subscription box services, we can say we already have these people, so let's exclude them from the ad targeting so that we're not wasting money showing ads to people who are already customers. Same thing goes for website data. If you have the proper software installed, tracking software, you can use your website visitors as an audience that you target on Facebook ads. The challenge is these options are not available across all platforms. So they're fairly robust on Facebook. LinkedIn has them, Twitter has them, Google certainly has them, but other platforms it gets very squidgy as to whether or not they offer this in a way that's meaningful and that works. But they are incredibly valuable, obviously, as you can see, forms of targeting. Once you have custom audiences built, you can use those on some platforms, primarily Facebook, to build lookalike audiences. So you can say, okay, Facebook, I've got this email list. I want you to go into your repository of users, and I want you to go find 1 million, 2 million, 5 million more people who look like these users and let me target them. Or find me people like my website visitors and let me build an audience that targets 2, 4, 6, 10 million more people like these people. These audiences become very powerful. And they're the ones that we typically see the best results for our clients when we use them. The challenge is they do require the setup. You do have to make sure that you have good email address lists or contact lists for your customers. You do have to make sure that the proper software is installed on your website, the tracking scripts that these platforms need to identify and match users to their database. But once you do, it really enables a powerful bunch of targeting options. Once you do have these custom or lookalike audiences built, you can start to do other things with them and combine them with other forms of targeting, say geography. So you can take this audience of people who have visited your website and say, take an email address list, and then build a list that's geo-targeted of those people so that they're in a particular region. Or it could be people who have a particular interest, or pretty much any of the other categories. You can start mixing and matching different ways of targeting to really produce some spectacular outcomes that let you get to very specific audiences that you want to reach. And that's the goal. We're not trying to reach all of the eyeballs. We're not trying to reach the most eyeballs. We're trying to reach the right eyeballs, because reaching all of the eyeballs invariably means that we're wasting money reaching people who aren't relevant to our clients or to our business. When you have scripts installed on your website that enable the ad platforms to understand what's happening on your website, it unlocks some other really important features beyond building target audiences. One of the great things that it does is it allows you to leverage artificial intelligence to start changing and refining your audience while your ad campaign is in progress. So what happens is, if you have the pixel installed on your Facebook pixel installed on your site, Facebook starts watching as your ad serves, and over time starts excluding people that aren't as relevant, that aren't reacting to your ad message. So it's actually a sort of fourth dimension of ad targeting, whereby they're learning as ads are being served in real time, getting down to the most relevant audience. And so that also means that you have to do some more planning. You have to think about what you want to do, what ads you want to run before you intend to run them, so that you build yourself in some time for the algorithms to learn, because it typically takes a week or so, depending on the size of your audience, for Facebook to learn by watching what's going on. And the same thing can happen for Google as well. They understand, they build little micro conversions along the path that a user might take to ultimately purchasing something, and start serving or not serving ads to people based on what they've learned by watching people. And this is something that you can start incorporating into every single ad campaign if you have the proper infrastructure set up. With all of the options that are available, it's incumbent upon us to counsel our clients to begin moving in the direction that lets them take advantage of some of these options. So the first thing that means is they need to start thinking about their customer lists or their stakeholder lists. Having good lists and keeping good list practices is a really important task to have as any organization, because now, more so than even a few years ago, having an email list is more valuable than it used to be, because there's so many more ways we can now use it. We can use it to build audiences, to include or exclude people based on a variety of factors. Something else that means is that your web properties are more valuable. These legacy forms of digital marketing, since digital marketing's been around for a couple decades now, we have legacy forms like websites, like email marketing. They're actually more valuable because we have different ways to use those touch points with our audience to understand our audience better, but also to measure and verify what we're doing. One of the really important things to do for any campaign to help validate our service and validate what it is we do for clients is to set up some ways to measure it. And so you may be doing something like a press release or some sort of awareness message, but we can also build into that some ways to measure awareness. We can look for ad recall lift or other measures, or we can drive people to a website and understand better what they do when they get there. All the sorts of things that can help us better validate to our clients that our message is resonating and that we're producing outcomes as opposed to outputs. So second, we also need to have the conversation with our clients about what needs to be set up in terms of an infrastructure to make use of all of these valuable targeting platforms. Even if a client isn't going to use them immediately, having them set up to begin collecting data is a valuable thing. For example, website targeting scripts, they can hold user data for 180 days. Some targeting methods can do a full 365, but if you set up a tracking script, it has 180 days worth of data that it can work from. So obviously the more of that data you have, the better your targeting is going to be. So you need to set that up now as opposed to later. Third, we need to start thinking about conversions and even micro conversions for our clients, so that we have something to measure. There may not be a direct measure. They may not have a sale. In fact, most of our clients are B2B clients who don't have sort of a direct sale. They're not an e-commerce site that is selling things in a way that is easily trackable. Maybe they're in stores. Maybe they're offering a business service and they do large contracts. They don't do something where you could see an individual sale. That's okay. We can still identify and create different pathways, and we're limited only by our creativity, that help us measure those outcomes so that we can show, yes, we did drive leads. We did drive people to a white page to download. We did drive people to a video, and we're able to observe how much of that video they were interested in. So setting these things up and preparing our clients to start thinking about this is a really important part of our role as marketers, public relations practitioners, and advertisers. Number 4, we need to get our clients to start thinking about all of their properties holistically. If we can create a system where their audience is bouncing around to different places, from an email to the website, from an email to social media, from social media to the website, to the blog, this is a good thing because it can help us better understand audiences. And it can help us unlock tools, advanced tools like marketing automation, where if a member of the audience visits a certain page demonstrating their interest in that thing, we can then target them with a different ad message. And really getting down to customized messages for each individual segment of the audience is the ideal place to go. And there are increasingly more and more tools that let us do that more easily with less of a lift on our part. The other thing is, when clients are thinking holistically about their platforms, and they have robust ways of reaching their audience through their website or through email marketing, it allows them not to have to pay Facebook or Google or LinkedIn every time they want to access that audience. If you have a really high-functioning, multi-channel, omni-channel communications program in this sort of converged media space, that lets you save money but also still reach your people. Thanks for watching. If you want more information, you can visit our website at Lambert.com or reach out to us. We're happy to help you whenever we can.